we need to be really aware that is part of the sports lesson, of the sport lectures, not just to have the exercise, but also to understand, to observe ourselves, to know ourselves, our body, and then regulate in order to have the other activities.
You are listening to Yogi Patel on Now What with Eder Cuevas. I, of course, am excited to speak with another Montessorian, and this Montessorian has experience in sports education, adolescence, and much more. But instead of me saying what Eder has to offer, let me ask him, Eder, tell us a little bit about your background and perhaps start with how did you get into Montessori and all the work that you have done so far?
I am being part of the Montessori School of Chihuahua. I'm currently living here since 20 years ago. And they started because they create an adolescent program. So they need one person to follow what is called a Good Shepherd. That is a program that Montessori, it is related to Montessori for elementary. And then they want someone to take this part to adolescence. So I get involved in that way. But after half of the year, the school offered me to send me to Bergamo in Italy to this elementary level training center. So I went there to take my training, and it was wonderful. It was one of the best and transformative experience of all my life. So that's why I became a Montessorian. And after that, like you mentioned, I've been involved in the adolescent world since I think 2014. I was really connected with David Kahn for like 5 to 6 years, and with different Montessorians around the world, helping to increase the number of programs that we have for adolescents, because it is truly amazing how Montessori works for adolescents. So I'm really happy that there are more and more experiences for them around the world. So that's a little bit about it. For the sports, that it's really important. With my studies was around that in college. And then after that, when I came back from Bergamo, so I started to teach in the university here in Chihuahua for 15 years. So I was in charge for some of the areas in the bachelor degree, but also in the master degree, because I do have a sports psychology master degree.
So interestingly enough, when my children were younger, we believed Montessori education, was for young children. So when I travel around the world, in some countries, we see Montessori education as a preschool program. And what you just mentioned, Montessori is not just for very young tots, but we actually have Montessori program all the way to high school. And many public schools are now embracing Montessori education. So we're seeing in the United States, at least, lots and lots of high schools that are Montessori. And sports, what an integral role sports plays, in it's the social, emotional, intellectual growth of our children. So I think parents may also have some questions relating to this, and this was my belief. So perhaps parents sometimes believe that Montessori program, perhaps doesn't have sports or physical activities. Tell us a little bit more about how did you kind of combine Montessori and sports? Because sports is part of life, and we play often after school or on the weekend. However, many schools do incorporate sports in the schools.
As you mentioned, sports are part of life. It is not just a question related to parents, actually, because some of the guides, some of the teachers are also like a little bit confused about this. What about sports? Because sports has this component of competition, and we are Montessori. We don't like competition. We don't like peace. We don't like community. But at the end, I think the way that for me since the beginning was easy to relate it is around movement, because for doing sports, you need movement. It is a physical activity, but with rules. So therefore, one of the main things that for me was the point of action is understanding what actually movement is. And Dr. Montessori was truly amazing talking about movement. She was understanding that this is part of the way that we need to learn, and the way that it is a part of the behavior of the personality. It's part of the creation of the personality. So that's why movement is the essential component of Montessori education. It is a sensitive period, as we know. We like to have the children free to move inside the classroom and outside, of course, the classrooms, because there are a lot of neurological connections or the synapses that we have in our nervous system. So that's why it's really important related to sports, but not in the way that we usually believe that sports are, because we usually think that it's having a ball or having the rules or any sports that you want to play. And we said, okay, let's do it. But it isn't the same thing applying to what Montessori relates in the sense of isolation of the difficulty. So it's not that we're doing a sports per se in children's house or in infant community or in Nido, of course. But we are starting with movements that little by little is going to create the skills needed for the sports later. And as we know in the second plane of development, we know that in elementary, these parts that they need to be with other children are created also the great opportunity to start sports in a better way. Now more clear, now more connected, now the way that we know sports. But before that, we think in physical activity, in some actions, some movements that they are going to need later in the sense of sports.
You spoke about guides and in the schools. How do we incorporate sports? How do we begin to offer sports on during the breaks, noticing that we have the 3-hour work period in the morning, which is uninterrupted, 2 hours in the afternoon?
We know then, and we respect that. I think it's something that we need to respect in order to have a really good sports program or movement program. The first thing is that understanding that the movement that is involved is going to help to improve academic through the movement. The movement is so connected, as I mentioned, with the nervous system. So it's going to be helpful. And the other thing is that, as we know, there are children that needs to move more than the others because they have a lot of energy. So they really need this. And then they can be more ready to work to the hands or to this cycle that we have. So it's going to depend of the child's need. One of the options, but there are several options. One thing can be, for instance, Montessori Sports is offering to have one shelf like we do have for practical life activities or for language or for mathematics. It's a possibility to have also a shelf that they can use, like they take the materials, go outside, having a presentation, do the presentation, coming back, leave it there, and then pick another material or have another lesson. That is a possibility in Children's House. I'm really seeing some programs that they incorporate this, and sometimes they're related with cards, with the commands that and the options that you have there. We know how is later in elementary that there are some relationships also with language, with things in terms of verb, that verb symbols movement. So therefore, we can connect it with action that they can do outside, again, with physical activity. But the traditional way to see this is how you can incorporate in an after-class sessions that you can have in afternoon or in other times that you can have. By the way, a really option that is working, and I really encourage the schools to do, or try at least, is starting each morning with sports. And I think in an adolescent, if you have this, because they need sports in order to help them, of course, healthy, but they are going to get in the classrooms for any of the science, humanity, or any other subject that they're going to have. So they are more ready for that. They are really want to do that because the energy that they are not just spend, but also acquire, because the movement is giving you this part up to the body to encourage to do more and more activities. So it's going to be helpful in the sense to have concentration and the sense of cooperation and all the things that need to require to lead through the day. So it's a wonderful way to start the day.
Love the way that we could start the morning with sports. Eder, how could we transition from the sports time outdoors back into the classroom to prepare for the day?
When we do nothing, when we just say, okay, go outside and come back, it's going to be a chaos. It's chaotic because, again, the energy that they are experimenting in their bodies are giving a lot of movement and giving a lot of talk. I'm not going to lead the conversation to sweating and all the things, but of course, it's something happening with the body. So we need to incorporate in when we are in the sports environments, we need to incorporate the breathing in, breathing out, some exercise that is going to help to regulate the way that they are right now and the way that they're going to move to the classroom. So it is really important to have this time to relax, to have this time if they need to do something with maybe changing the clothes or maybe have a shower. I don't know. The way that they can also because the programs, the kind of schedule that they have. So we need to be really aware that is part of the sports lesson, of the sport lectures, not just to have the exercise, but also to understand, to observe ourselves, to know ourselves, our body, and then regulate in order to have the other activities.
If you like the content of this video, please don't forget to follow. And also, if you want more information, visit the website yogipateltte.com.